We are used to thinking of dopamine as the chemical of pleasure, as if the brain presses a reward button and we feel good. But science shows something far more unsettling. Dopamine is not simply about pleasure. It is a molecule of anticipation, pursuit, prediction, and movement toward a goal. And that is exactly why it can become the fuel of addiction. Look at the modern world. Endless scrolling, notifications, fast sugar, fast food, short-form videos. None of these things merely distract you. They train your brain to live in a constant chase for the next impulse. And if you do not understand how this system works, then you are not controlling your attention, your discipline, or your life. The system is controlling you. To take back control, you first need to understand the architecture. Deep in the brain, there is a pathway called the mesolimbic pathway, one of the core circuits of the reward system. It begins in the ventral tegmental area, or VTA. This small but crucial region sends dopamine signals forward, especially to the nucleus accumbens. That circuit helps the brain decide what matters, what is worth pursuing, and where energy should be invested. And this is where the first major misunderstanding begins. Dopamine does not simply rise when you get the reward. In many cases, it rises before the reward arrives, in anticipation. Not when you eat the food, but when you smell it. Not when you receive the like, but when you see the notification light. Not when you achieve the goal, but when the brain realizes the reward may be close. That means dopamine is not the finish line. It is the engine that pushes you toward the finish line. It is the chemistry of go check, try again, maybe this time. In a healthy system that helps you hunt, learn, build, work, and persist. In an unhealthy system, it turns you into someone dependent on the next tiny signal. The next key idea is reward prediction error. This concept became widely known through the work of Wolfram Schultz. Its meaning is simple, but dangerous in the context of modern life. If a reward is unexpected, the dopamine response is strong. If the reward is fully expected, the response becomes weaker. And if the brain expects a reward and does not get it, the signal drops sharply. Now think about how perfectly social media is built around that principle. You never know what will appear when you refresh the feed. Sometimes nothing, sometimes a message, a like, a shocking clip, a piece of news. That unpredictability is what makes the system so sticky. The brain does not only respond to reward, it responds especially strongly to variable reward, to the possibility of a prize that may or may not come. That is the logic of casinos, slot machines, endless feeds, and phone notifications. It is not steady pleasure that traps you. It is uncertainty. The brain learns, check again, the next attempt might matter. And that is how attention gets hijacked. Not because the content is deeply valuable, but because the system has learned how to pull your biological lever. Now we go deeper. Dopamine can be thought of in at least two important modes, tonic and phasic. Tonic dopamine is your baseline. In simple terms, it is your background level of motivation, drive, willingness to act, and general engagement with life. Not a euphoric spike, but the steady tension of a system ready to move. Phasic dopamine is a short burst, a spike, a rapid response to something salient, a notification, sugar, a surprise reward, a new video, an unexpected message. And the problem is not that spikes exist. The problem is how often they happen. When the brain is hit again and again by fast, easy, high-intensity dopamine spikes, it begins to adapt. Normal work feels dull. Deep reading feels too slow. Complex learning feels almost painful. Silence feels irritating. A brain trained on constant spikes becomes less sensitive to calm, slow, meaningful forms of satisfaction. This is where many people get trapped. They think they have become lazy. They think they have lost willpower. They think they simply lack discipline. But often the issue runs deeper. Their motivational system has been tuned to cheap stimulation. The baseline becomes poorer, while short bursts become more dominant. As a result, effort feels heavier, procrastination becomes more frequent, normal life feels flatter, and the person becomes more dependent on the next rapid reward. At the level of neuroplasticity, this matters even more. The brain is not fixed. It changes according to what you repeat. If you overload the reward system with intense stimulation again and again, receptor sensitivity can decrease. In this discussion, people often focus on D2 receptors, which are involved in motivation and reward sensitivity. In plain language, The more loudly you keep shouting at your reward system, the less it can hear the ordinary voice of life. Things that once felt rewarding stop feeling strong enough. Things that once motivated you stop moving you. And that is when you start needing more stimulation just to feel normal. This is why the idea of a dopamine detox, although simplified, contains a rational core. It does not mean eliminating dopamine. That would be impossible as long as you are alive. It means reducing the most aggressive, rapid, high-intensity sources of stimulation for a period of time. Less endless scrolling, fewer notifications, less chaotic content consumption, less digital fragmentation of your nervous system. When that overstimulation goes down, the brain can gradually recover sensitivity. Simple things begin to feel noticeable again. Deep work becomes less painful. Sleep starts to matter more. Silence stops feeling threatening. You begin to recover the ability to feel satisfaction, not from the flash, but from the process. But control does not mean total abstinence. The goal is not to become a joyless machine. The goal is to move from chaotic spikes to controlled spikes. Not to let algorithms decide when your brain gets rewarded, but to build a system in which dopamine works for you. Difficult work, then rest. Training, then pleasure. A solved problem, then reward. A created result, then relaxation. Effort first, then reinforcement. Meaning first, then pleasure. That is how dopamine becomes linked again, not to escape from life, but to progress within life. And that leads to the final point. Your brain is not broken, but it is trainable, which means it can be retrained. If it is hard for you to focus, hard to read, hard to work without checking your phone every few minutes, that is not a final verdict. It is a signal. Your reward system has stopped serving your goals and started serving external stimuli. But control can be reclaimed by cutting unnecessary spikes, by restoring sleep, by training attention, by using physical effort, by creating an environment in which reward follows effort again, not random swipes. Control over dopamine is really control over the direction of your life. Because where your attention flows, your future follows. And if you learn to direct this system, you will become not only more productive, but calmer, stronger, clearer in thought, and much less vulnerable to a world that profits from your distraction. And in the next video, we will move from theory to concrete protocols, nutrition, sleep, and lifestyle strategies that help support this system in real life. Subscribe to MindLab Vision so you do not miss it.